All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Davis Method Coaching Series on the White Mountains Triathlon, brought to you by Millennium Running and 2XU. Last week we covered the half distance. This week we'll be talking a little bit about the Olympic distance. So there's a few differences between a half and Olympic triathlon that we'll get into. The course is primarily the same with a little less biking, the same loop running but not repeating it 3 times, and a smaller version of the swim, but starting at the same beach. So if you've already watched the half, some of this information is going to be a little bit repetitive. However, I definitely recommend you watch the beginning section where we're going to talk about the transition, because all 3 races, the half, the Olympic, and the sprint, are going to be in the same transition area. More details to come about that. Also, we'll be talking about the swim, the bike, and the run and sections. So if you look in the details of this video, you'll be able to click to the exact minute when we start talking about the swim, start talking about the bike, start talking about the run. So if you do want to skip ahead, jump around, go back to a certain section, you don't have to try and find it. You can just click on that. Hopefully it'll be a little bit easier for you. Thanks to Frank for commenting about that. We appreciate the assessment. Okay, so you've signed up for the Olympic distance, or you're considering it and you're watching this video, which is awesome. We really appreciate the viewership. The Olympic distance is going to start at 8:30 in the morning on June 23rd, just like all the other 2 races. It's going to be a swim, bike, and run, as always, we hope, right? There's going to be a race meeting at 8:15 in the morning, mandatory for everybody down on the beach, all right? Now, like I said, transition is a little bit funky, so let's dedicate some time to that. Transition area is going to open for everybody, whether you're in the half, the Olympic, or the sprint. Everyone's available to go into the transition area at 5:30 in the morning. All right, now that's kind of early if you're going to be racing at 8:30. So unless you have friends or family who are also racing the half that you want to be there to support, I don't recommend getting there at 5:30 in the morning, because 3 hours is a little bit excessive to be standing around waiting. It might be a little bit chilly. So you probably get there around an hour and a half before the race starts, which would put you at 7 a.m. Okay? So how transition area is going to work? There's going to be designated racks for each distance. So the half will have a specific section, the Olympic will have a specific section, and the sprint will have a specific section. Now you'll know all of this going in, so you'll be able to see where your bike is. Make sure that you're comfortable with that, so when you're running in out of the swim, you find your bike quickly and you're not confused by all of the bikes there. Just like a bigger race, there's going to be a lot of bikes in it, but that's okay. Now, the transition area is going to close for the specific athletes that are starting 20 minutes prior to their race. So that's kind of confusing. For the 7 a.m. start, the half distance, the transition area will close at 6:40 in the morning, but only for the half athletes. Because the race starts at 8:30 for you guys for the Olympic distance, your transition area will close at 8:10. Now, for people who are experienced with triathlon, you know that there's typically an in and an out, and that's it. White Mountains has decided to add an entrance, all right? So there'll be a swim in, bike out, bike in, run out section with timing mats. That's not going to be where you're going to go in and out of the transition area. I'm going to put a little graphic up. It's not going to be exact, but at least you'll be able to get an idea of what we're looking at here, because there'll be an entrance and an exit for athletes who aren't competing right then and there. So for the people who are getting there at 7 a.m. or a little bit before that, because they're racing the Olympic distance, the half athletes won't be in the transition area because they'll be at the beach in their meeting getting ready to go. So you'll still be able to go in and out of the transition area, have your chip on, and not be disrupting any timing mats, because there'll be a separate entrance and exit for you. This seems a little crazy, having been in a lot of different transition areas, but once you think about it, because there's 3 different races going on, it actually is going to make for a better athlete experience and a smoother day on the whole. We don't have to put together 3 completely separate transition areas. That would just be crazy. But we also don't want to have people just going in and out of the swim in area when people are running, getting their wetsuits off in a hurry, trying to get to their bike as quickly as possible, which is why there's that separate area as well. Okay? So to kind of boil that down, 3 different bike rack sections for each discipline, for each distance, and an in and out section that will be for people going in and out setting up, and then different in and outs for when you're actually going in and out, swimming in, biking out, etc. Okay? So for the Olympic distance, make sure that you get there in time so that when 8:10 comes around and your transition area closes, you're ready to be already on the beach, ready to listen to the meeting and get going for the race. All right? So 8:10 transition area closes for the Olympic distance, and 8:30 a.m. you start your race. 8:15 is your briefing. Okay? All right. So, warm up for an Olympic distance race. 5-10 minutes per discipline, probably on the 5-minute side. So like I said, in the half distance race, you're going to want to run for about 5 minutes. Just shake the legs, make sure the shoes feel good, make sure that if you're wearing socks, you remember how to put those on quickly. If you bundle up in a certain way, everyone has their own techniques. If you've got speed laces on, that they're at the right tension. Then hop on your bike, 5 minutes just spinning really easy in a higher gear, going through all of your gears one last time to make sure everything is working fluidly, making sure that you have the right tire pressure that you want, and then getting that bike right back into the transition area. The majority of your warm-up, in my opinion, should be spent in the water, so 5 to 10 minutes there, in your wetsuit, assuming that you're wearing one, getting yourself out, moving your arms pretty quick, kicking the legs a little bit, practicing your sighting, looking at the buoys, getting an idea of where you're going to be going, the fact that you're going to have the buoys on the left the entire time, just taking it all in. But I find the water to be very calming, so any pre-race nerves, once you get in the water, you'll be able to kind of relax a little bit, stretch in the water if you'd like, and then get back up on the beach for 8:15 for your race briefing, and then you're good to go for the race. So, also like we talked about a little bit in the half video, the start is a little bit narrow. I'll put the same picture up again. There's a dock on your right and buoys on your left. And buoys, by buoys I mean a rope buoy similar to what you'll see in a pool, because there's an area where people are allowed to swim recreationally when there's a lifeguard on duty. So you'll kind of be shuttled into that as you get out into the middle of the lake, and then you're going to keep the buoys on your left, do 2 laps around the orange buoys, 2 laps around the orange buoys. You never get out of the water in between laps, and then you're going to exit on the beach, go up the paved path, a little bit of an incline that gets you into the transition area, follow the signs to swim in, get onto your bike, and you're good to go. As far as sighting is concerned, I recommend using the mountains. They're very big, and there's lots of distinct areas among them because of the trees being cut down for these ski slopes. There's a big rock wall on the far end of the lake, so when you're turning, you'll be able to sight and see that. Bilateral breathing is a good idea to keep yourself comfortable, making sure you know where you are left and right if you're comfortable doing that, but don't do something new on race day. It's always a good idea to practice what you're doing before you implement it in the race. All right? As always, comment below if you have any questions specific to the swim, and we'll be sure to let you know what the answers are, and we'll get you as soon as possible. So, get yourself into transition number 1, get on your bike, make sure that you left it in an easier gear, because the first little bit of the bike out the parking lot and up the hill is uphill. It's only going to be a minute or 2, but you're going to want to spin those legs out, get them used to being on a bike as opposed to in the water. That way you're comfortable when you start your descent. Okay? The first downhill of the bike is about 6.2 miles. Okay? So I'm going to put a graphic up of the entire bike elevation profile. For you guys doing the Olympic distance, it's essentially a down and then an up. Okay? So you've got 40K, about 20K down, 20K up, with a few rollers in between. Don't get me wrong, it's not just down and up, and we'll talk specifics in a second. But you are going to be essentially going down and then traveling up at the last half of the bike. So be prepared for that. Make sure you put some hills into your training. So the first 6.2 miles, you're going downhill. Again, like I said in the other video, frost heaves, cracks in the pavement. If you're not really comfortable in your aero position, make sure that you're upright and in the hood so that you can properly get down the hill without having any kind of crash or anything like that. I would hate to see that happen, especially right at the beginning of the race. So be careful. Don't pass anybody if you're not comfortable. Make sure you take your time getting down to the bottom of the hill, but still, proceed quickly. And then you get to mile around 8.3 or so, where you're going to crank back up, and then you're going to go back down till about mile 10.2. Okay? Now, at this point, you're approaching going into the center of Bethlehem, where there's a pretty decent climb. Okay? So you're going to want to get into an easy gear, keep the legs moving pretty quickly. Cadence high on climbs is a good thing, and you don't want to get yourself out of the saddle and start really moving around, because the more moving around you do, the more energy you spend. You're going to notice that your breathing gets harder and harder, and that your heart rate goes up. So just relax, sit back in the saddle, trust your training, trust yourself, keep those legs moving. It's going to feel like you're going really slow, especially compared to the first half of the race where you're going downhill for a really extended period of time, but that's okay, because your average speed is going to be really high, and then we're going to just gradually get it back to where you're at, and by the time you're done with the race, you should be at your normal race pace as if it were a flat, because you've gotten that downhill and then a little bit of uphill, okay? That brings us to about mile 12.8 or so, where you've got a nice little downhill for about 2.5, 3 miles, okay? At that point, I recommend you keep moving the legs, because you're going to want to spin out as you go downhill, because then you've got to climb to the end of the race. So that little spurt of hill in Bethlehem, getting into Bethlehem, is going to zap you a little bit, but if you stay under control, you'll be totally fine. Utilize the downhill, get some nutrition, get some hydration in there, make sure that you compose yourself, a few deep breaths to keep the heart rate down, and then we're back into the hills. Okay, so the last 9 miles are uphill. So it's the same finish course as the half, so we're going to climb up the main road, and then we're going to turn onto a bike path, which is still paved, and it's going to get a little bit steeper, and you're going to finish crossing over at a bridge, 1/4 mile downhill into the transition area, and you're good to go. Your aid stations for the ride are at mile 8 and mile 15. There'll be water available and gels, so make sure that you have some kind of nutrition in your drink if you are looking for that, because at the mile 8 and 15, there won't be any Gatorade Endurance or anything like that. So if you're drinking your nutrition, make sure you have it in your own bottles and that you have enough. 2 bottles should be pretty good for an Olympic distance race. So if you have your standard bike, you should be able to carry your stuff. Then we transition and we get ourselves into the run. So the run is the exact same course as the half, which I explained in detail in the half video. It's just 1 lap instead of 3. So typically in an Olympic distance race, you're running a 10K or 6.2 miles. For this race, we're doing 1 lap, which is 4.2 miles. So it's a grueling 4.2 miles, but it is shorter than your typical Olympic distance, which is nice for some people, and strong runners would prefer to have it a little bit longer. But hey, it's still a great race overall. So for the Olympic race, you're going to get out of the transition area, go down into the bike path, get those run legs under you. Like I said in the half video, you're going to cruise along, keep a nice quick cadence. It's rolling, but it's pretty flat, and it's a gradual downhill until you reach mile 1.2. Get the graphic up there again. You're going to see it, mile 1.2 shoots up, evens out for a little bit, goes back down, and then you hit a turnaround point. You shoot back up again, evens out a little bit, and go back down. That up and down is going to take a toll on your legs, but once you finish that, you're at mile 1.8, and then you're almost done with your run, right? You're 2 miles into a 4-mile run, so it's totally fine. Then you're going to be on the back half. You're going to be flat from 2.3-ish to 2.9, where you can get cruising again, and then you're going to be rolling from 2.9 to 3.3. And then the last 0.9 miles of this loop is uphill on that dirt path, so make sure that you have good footing. You're watching where you're running, because there's going to be some ruts here and there, especially if there's a good rain right before the race. Wouldn't want to roll an ankle in the last 0.9 miles of your race. So just be aware of the ground. You're going to get a little bit more of a cushion, but that also means you don't have as hard of a push off. So make sure you're driving those knees up the hill all the way up to your finish, and then you're good to go. The aid station for the run is going to be the same spot as for the half distance. So as soon as you get to that 1.2, 1.5 mile area, you're going to see that aid station, and then you're going to go do your out and back with the hills. You're going to hit the aid station again, and then you're going to come back to the finish. So you'll hit the aid station twice on a 4.2 mile run. I think that's completely fine. Plenty of nutrition available for that. You shouldn't need to carry any on yourself unless you have a really specific brand or type of nutrition you like to take in. So shed the weight, keep the nutrition at the aid station, just grab it as you go by, do the hills, grab another sip and a goo on the way back, finish strong, enjoy yourself at the top of the mountain, have a great day. Hopefully everyone enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all about the Olympic, please comment below, send us an email, or go to our website and hit contact us and then send us a message. At the end of all of these videos, but right before, I'm going to do a frequently asked questions video if we have enough people responding. And I will also be at the Summit Social the night before the race, doing a little talk about the race itself and mostly answering questions. So looking forward to seeing you all at the race. Hopefully everyone's having a really good training session here and there, and good luck. Thanks everybody.